Previously on Spenelli Speaks.
Know you've been a good friend, and that's in the thick and thin, and I know it's never gonna end, 'cause you've been a good friend.
Hi everyone, Dani here. Welcome back to my channel. Today is an exciting day because it is the 1st of March, which means we get to change up our TBR. And considering this month is middle grade March, I am super excited because it gives me a really amazing excuse to read a lot of middle grade books all in 1 month. So I'm very excited. Of course, I do have other books in the mix, so we're going to talk about those today. But before we get into that, if you're new here, I hope you take some time, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. If you have been around the block a few times, you know how much I love you, and I am so happy to have you here, so welcome back. Now, today's TBR couldn't be complete without all of those lingering books that I have that I'm not going to show for the gazillionth time. But do know that I am still reading Eye of the World, Kristen Lavenstatter, The Other Boleyn Girl. If you care to know where I'm at with those books, check out my Goodreads. I do put in little notes as I have been progressing, and I have been reading little bits at a time. You'll notice those updates in my weekly vlogs. Now, the other 2 books that I am reading that are year-long reads, so it's okay that they have been continuing, is the first one is my buddy read with Laura from BookBubbler. We are reading Edward Rutherfurd's Sarum, which is a novel of England. Again, if you're interested in my progression, please feel free to check out my Goodreads. The other book that I am reading for a year-long buddy read is with Christy, Lewis, Dostoevsky in space. We are reading A People's Tragedy, which is about the Russian Revolution from like the late 1800s to 1924. Now, a little caveat with that, I feel awkward, I guess, reading that considering the atrocities happening in the Ukraine right now. However, this book is about a people's tragedy. So they are talking about the people of Russia and how the Russian political everything has affected the people there. So we're really reading about the people. So that's why I feel comfortable continuing with that read, if you are at all concerned. So anywho, on to the new books for March, which I'm very excited about. I do have quite a few middle grade here, as well as a few other reads. Now, I am participating in a read-along that Emily over at Novel Novels is taking care of, and she has us reading the Thomas Cromwell series, which starts with Wolf Hall, which we read in January and February, and now we are switching over to, I think it's called Bring Up the Bodies, which is the shortest of the 3. So I'll be listening to that on audiobook and getting into the second of that series. So that should be interesting. Then another buddy read that I'm reading that is not middle grade is with Naomi over at Naomi's Bookshelf. We have gotten ourselves caught up in a great YA thriller mystery book series, and we read one of the books last year, and I would say maybe October, and we're so blown away by this book. It took us like 2.5 days to read, and this past month in February we read the second in the series, and the series that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and that was actually the title of the first book. The second book was Good Girl, Bad Blood, which again reread in like 2.5 days because you just can't stop. Once it starts with the real action of the book, you cannot stop. So we decided let's just go ahead and read the third and what I believe is the final of the series. I'm not quite sure. It's the last one that's out currently, and that is As Good as Dead. So I was able to get this from my library. Oh, and it does say the final A Good Girl's Guide to Murder novel. So it is the last one in the series. So we're going to go ahead and read this. It is the biggest one in the series, but let me tell you, it'll probably still only take us about 2.5 days. So we're going to start reading that actually today because we are so excited about this book. I don't know what it's about. I don't want to know what it's about because once you start reading, you just can't stop. And it's just a fantastic read. So if you like mystery, like thrillery, YA sort of novel, so there's not a lot of like guts and blood and sexual content. You know, some thrillers have that kind of stuff. This one is excellent. It's so good. The characters are excellent. I highly recommend reading that. So that is another non-middle grade book that I'm going to be reading in March. So then for the actual middle grade books that I'll be reading, I have my small pile here. See, it's a little small pile. But what I did to choose these books, one of the books is the book club pick for, say that 10 times fast, for DoubleBookedCo. So I'll let you know which one that is. And if you want to join us, we are happy to have you join in. And then 2 are actually from my 22 books to read in 2022 pile. So I'll start with those ones. The first one being Johnny Tremaine. Now, if you follow me, you know I've talked about this book a couple of times. My brother, one of my brothers, this is his favorite book, and he has been on me to read it, and I found it in a thrift store for 49 cents. I was like super happy. I tried to start reading it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't read this book. Well, I found it on audiobook, and I put it in my 22 books to read in 2022 because, quite frankly, I love my brother very much, and I just want to read this for him. So this is a story of Boston and revolt against the British. So it's the Revolutionary War, and it follows this Johnny Tremaine. And it's supposed to be really good. I think it's a Newbery book, but I'm not sure considering the copy that I have. It's pretty old. It's got the stained edges. It smells like an old book. So I'm excited that I have the audio for this because I think I'm going to need it. So anyways, that's the first of my middle grade books. Then also from that 22 books to read in 2022, I have Anne of Green Gables. Now this is a really interesting copy. It's part of that Puffin and Pantone collection. You'll notice that I had one of these for Wizard of Oz. So it was all yellow. But I love these editions. Like, I really hope that I keep finding these. This one I found at the dollar store. So it's a brand new copy of Anne of Green Gables. And yes, I have not ever read Anne of Green Gables. I get it. I know. I'm totally behind. My childhood was crap because I never read this book. But I never got into it. I know the story a little bit. Like, I feel like I've seen something for it. I know that it's an orphan who gets adopted by, like, I wouldn't say elderly, but an older couple for their farm. And I'm pretty sure what I recall is they really wanted a boy and they get a girl. And then it's the best thing that ever happened to them. So I'm pretty sure that's what the story is. I remember as a kid, I think I always mixed Anne of Green Gables up with Pollyanna and Pippi Longstocking. Like, those 3 characters to me were just all the same character. So yeah, so I'm going to read this. I'm going to get it off that bucket list of books you're supposed to read. And that'll be part of my middle grade pile. So we have that. Then, like I was saying, for DoubleBookedCo, we had 3 books that we were able to vote on. We had like an Irish book because it is the month for the Irish readathon. We had this book for middle grade March, and then the other book I believe was also kind of middle grade. But the voters voted, and they voted on Green Glass House by Kate Milford. And this is a middle grade book. And I can tell you, I'm super excited to read this because I've never heard of this book. I absolutely love the cover, but what this is about is a smuggler's inn, and there's a 12-year-old boy who is trying to relax, and something's happening. I think there's like ghosts involved, lots of clues and mystery kind of stuff. But it sounds really good. And I'm a cover buy kind of person. So this cover is just calling to me, and I cannot wait to read more. So I'm excited about that. Now, with middle grade March, I know there's a bunch of prompts and everything. I'm not really going towards the prompts. I'm just reading middle grade, which means you're participating. But at the end, when I do my wrap up, I will probably go back and see like which prompts did I actually, you know, fulfill. So if you're looking for any recommendations, certainly feel free to read any of the books that I'm reading, but I don't know what prompts they fulfill. So probably a bad way to start middle grade March. Anywho, I added this one at the last second. So for any of you 90s kids, this was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. And this is Sideways Stories from Wayside School. It's super small. It's just a bunch of silly stories. But I figured to be a little nostalgic this month, I would read this. And I'm really excited. It's going to be a fast read. I'll probably sit down and read the whole thing in one sitting. But I added this as well because it looks, I mean, I found it at the thrift store for $1. I just needed it in my life once again. Then I was collecting middle grade books that I thought I wanted to read, and I had recently picked this up at the thrift store for 49 cents, which is The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. And I know so many of you have mentioned that this book is phenomenal. So I just feel compelled to read it this month and get it off that bucket list. It says this is a bizarre chain of events begins when 16 unlikely people gather for a reading of Samuel W. Westing's will. And though no one knows why the eccentric, game-loving millionaire has chosen a virtual stranger and a possible murderer to inherit his vast fortune, one thing's for sure, Sam Westing may be dead, but that won't stop him from playing one last game. Wow, that sounds thrilling. I've never heard of this before other than the few of you that I've seen on BookTube talk about it. So I'm hoping it's as good as everyone says it is. So we'll be adding that to this month's TBR. Then the last physical book that I have here is one that I recently found at a thrift store. They had like this big book dump, and it's basically fill a bag for $3.99. And I found this book within the boxes. It is the very first Nancy Drew mystery story. It's in impeccable condition. And so this one is The Secret of the Old Clock. Now, when I was a kid, I used to love reading Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. So to have found this, like, I'm not trying to collect the whole series by any means, but to have the first one, and I saw it and I was like, I have to add that to my middle grade reading. So I'm going to read The Secret of the Old Clock, which is the first Nancy Drew, and I'm really excited about it. I remember just loving these books so much. And I have to thank Melinda Shea for gifting me her her book. It's just, I'm really excited about this one. So those are all the physical books that I have. Obviously, with my audiobook subscription through my library, I have up to 7 titles that I can rent out during the month. I know Bring Up the Bodies is going to be one of them, as well as Johnny Tremaine. So I may sprinkle in some middle grade in there too, but we'll see what the month looks like, considering I am very, very, very close to my due date. So those are the books that I'm planning on reading. Have you read any of these books? Are any of these on your current TBR for middle grade March? Are there any that I should look for in my audio library? Let me know. I'm super excited, and I just hope that everyone is as excited as me for this month in reading, especially as the snow starts to melt and we start seeing some blooms here and get some fresh air in our bodies. But yeah. Well, until next time, I hope you're all reading something great, taking care, and staying safe. And as always, I know you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.